Okay. Prepare yourself some magical sculpting magic from Ana Carolina Pereira. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to Sculpting Magic. Effortlessly create whimsical assets for your Unreal 5 scenes with ZBrush. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I was able to create this complete environment in just a few days by creating a modular workflow inside of ZBrush that kind of sped everything up. Yesterday, I did a different presentation on how we actually sped things up and put it all together in Unreal. So if you're interested, please go back and watch that as well. So just for some context, I'm going to show you what the project ended up looking like after just a few days of work. Go ahead and turn on the sound. So this project was done as a group with me, Ian Robinson, Ellie Wade, and Chad Perkins. Every person did a different type of presentation, and we all presented yesterday. So if you're interested in seeing what each person did and how they did it, please go visit the Day 1 video. Before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ana Carolina Pereira. I am a 3D technical and character artist working in games and VR. I have a bunch of experience mostly with serious applications, such as, for example, working for the Air Force or NASA, for medical enterprise, things like that. Currently, I am a professor at the Ringling College of Art and Design. I teach in 2 majors, game arts and VR, and I teach a variety of topics. Ironically, ZBrush is one of the things I teach the least, which is why I'm so happy to be here today. Okay, I have an online business where we do mentorships, workshops, and general ZBrush education, character art education. I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of outstanding companies, including Maxon today. My skills range from sculpture and fine arts in digital mediums to coding and scripting and tool creation, environment art, lighting. I've done a little bit of everything. Some other things, I'm from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I recently started a new podcast called Industry Standards. You guys should check it out. I interview pros from VFX, motion graphics, games, animation, and things like that. And that's my cat, Sparkles. I think that's why anybody ever watches my videos, is to see him. So part of how we're going to be efficient today with the way we are working inside of ZBrush is by using something called modular creation, a very common technique when it comes to making video game environments. But basically what we do is we create a 3D model by assembling a set of pre-made interchangeable parts or modules. You might have seen it in your favorite games as different parts of walls and windows and things like that that let you build a palace or a big structure. Today we're not making that. Today we are making a mushroom forest, so we're going to be making some modular mushrooms. And at the end, some rocks as well. It gives you the opportunity to create complex structures without having to model each element from scratch. It's a flexible workflow because you can easily change one without having to change everything. It allows for better collaboration between artists because multiple people can work on the same big environments together by making the small pieces. And of course, it gives you faster results, which as a technical artist, if you guys know anything about technical art, that's the whole point, is optimization, moving fast, kind of like making sure the wheel's turning well. So here's an example of something I created using modular pieces. This is the tool I created in Unreal yesterday during my presentation. Basically, this is a couple of models, but with a little bit of setup and a little bit of code, we can create an entire mushroom forest out of the same 2 models, which is actually a really efficient way to work. So today we're going to be doing the ZBrush aspect of this. We're going to make our mushrooms with some really cool new tools, different workflows, things that I'm not sure everybody knows about, so it's going to be really exciting and fun. Let's move on to ZBrush. I'm going to press the comma to close my lightbox, and then we can get started. So I'm going to start by creating the mushrooms. I'm going to do like a little sketch with my 2.5D here. Let me make my brush a little smaller. Oh, that's the opposite of small. So what we're going to do is we're going to create multiple like mushroom tops and multiple different mushroom bottoms. And we're going to be able to combine them in an interesting way eventually to create some like pre-made clumps and things like that that all look different and original. I'm going to go ahead and start the process off by creating a single mushroom top. I'm going to go ahead and click right here on Tool and just load up a primitive. I like using the Sphere 3D, dragging it into my scene, hitting Edit. Let's turn off the red material. Nobody likes that. And we're going to make it kind of black and white by using the basic material. And then I'm going to hit Make Polymesh 3D, one of the most essential steps of getting started on ZBrush. All right, so now I can sculpt on my what is going to be a mushroom top for us today. I'm going to start by trying to think of a way to speed up the workflow a little bit. I'm going to use the Move brush to kind of yank it around. Mushrooms, generally, most of them are kind of round, you'd agree, right? At least round on the one axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on symmetry by pressing X. That will give me symmetry on the X axis, and it's only two sides. If I go to Transform and click on the R underneath symmetry, that is radial symmetry, which will allow me to kind of have multiple points where I'm affecting the mesh in a radial pattern. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to change it to Y. That way, it's starting to become, more mushroom-like. If I come in here and I kind of start creating the mushroom shape. You can also change how many radial counts you have, as in how many little cursors are going to pop up and allow you to affect your mesh. I like to do it really dense at the beginning because I want my mushroom top to look really smooth. So the more of these you're going to do, the more smooth it's going to look. I'm going to just kind of start off by doing like a nice little round mushroom. We're going to do all sorts of shapes. The key with this particular system of creating little mushrooms and things in general that you're going to be making for every environment, if you're trying to save time, is to make them look as distinctive as possible. And another pro tip is to make them look different from every angle. That way you can just rotate things and it looks different, and then you get to enjoy your life a little bit more as opposed to sculpting 400 mushrooms. Although it's pretty enjoyable, so I wouldn't complain. So here's kind of a nice little round mushroom top shape. I'm just going to make it kind of like a button, like so. And then I'm already going to go ahead and append another primitive, a cylinder, and this will be like the stalk of the mushroom. Make Polymesh 3D, essential step, like so. Oh, looks like I accidentally didn't append. I'm supposed to append from here, and it will be appended as a subtool. I'm going to select my little stalk by alt-clicking it, scale it down, move it down, and now we have something that is like mildly representative of a mushroom. So how are we going to flesh this thing out? Again, we're going to create multiple tops and bottoms that are all extremely distinctive from each other. What I first like to do is I like to, kind of like make it more organic by maybe using a little bit of clay buildup. Maybe I'll divide it up a little bit. Divide it up to get it to look more smooth and also to get more details. And then I'll just kind of start sketching on it, just kind of breaking it up the surface. Mushrooms are extremely organic. And when I say organic, one of the distinctive features of an organic model to me is that nature is imperfect. Nature has bumps, lumps, and little imperfections, and we want to bring that in to make it look extra rich. So I'm already kind of just starting to break up the surface to make it look more like a mushroom. I'm kind of adding a little bit of that. Let me temporarily hide the stalk. I'm adding a little bit of that kind of, I don't know what these are called. I should have researched mushroom anatomy before coming here, huh? So the little bottom parts that you normally take off when you're cooking some portobello mushrooms. And we already have something. Mushrooms are, to get them to a base level, really easy. To get them to look amazing, they can be a little tricky. I'm going to kind of smooth the surface a little bit to get rid of these horizontal lines. A pro tip for that, actually, is to use the smooth directional brush. For those of you who use ZBrush, you're used to using the smooth brush with like the Alt key or the Shift key. But the smooth directional can be gotten from inside the lightbox. Brush, smooth, Smooth directional. Where is she? There it is. Okay. And what this will do is it will smooth strongly, it'll smooth stronger in one direction and not the other. So you notice, let me show you again. You see how we have these horizontal lines? I'm going to smooth stronger. The vertical lines stay exactly the same, but the horizontal lines are going away. So if you ever want to make sure you don't destroy your details, use the smooth directional, especially if your details are directional, of course. So I'm going to use the damn standard brush, which is like kind of a little knife, like so. And I'm going to change the alpha, which is how the brush is applied, to something more stripy, like this, so that we can start kind of adding a little bit of texture to our mushroom. That's a little strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it down by the intensity, by holding down spacebar, which will give me the options inside of my brush. And I'm going to just turn it down to like 10, and I'm going to start drawing on there. The way alphas work is very similar to a lot of other 3D programs. So wherever the alpha looks white, the brush is being applied at 100% intensity. Wherever the brush looks black, it's being applied at 0% intensity, so it changes the shape of the way the brush is affecting the surface. You get to have a lot of control over your alphas, and I'm actually going to be showing you guys how to make some really easily. So I'm just using Alt to invert my brush, kind of creating some stripes down here, things like that. And there I have kind of like the most basic little mushroom yet. Let's go ahead and work on the stalk for a little bit. I'm going to divide up as well. Kind of get it a little smooth. Before I start smoothing, let's go ahead and make sure that the radial symmetry is on the y-axis. Turn it up a little bit. And remember that the bigger the number, the more kind of area you're going to be affecting. I'm going to make this a little bit, do not switch. I'm going to make this a little bit longer because it's going to work better with the system that I'm trying to create for us today. But I'm going to grab the clay buildup, kind of add maybe a little thickness towards the base, make it look nice and organic. Don't stress too much. At the end of the day, it's a cute little mushroom more than anything. A little smooth directional goes a long way. And to some degree, we have our first modular mushroom. That being said, we could do a lot more with this, all right? So let me go ahead and create another top. So I could duplicate this. Personally, when I was working on the project, everything was duplicated. I was just like, oh, let's go. I don't want to make things from scratch. So I'm going to duplicate this mushroom, and I'm going to grab my move brush, make sure that my radial symmetry is on, and start shaping it. That's already kind of another option, but I want to go for that more classical mushroom shape here. Be careful, because radial symmetry, especially the more cursors you put in there, can really intensify the way your brush is being applied. So I'm going to kind of create this little shape. And we could have already called this one a separate mushroom, but let's change up the surface as well. I personally like changing up the surface a little bit. To detail these, I like to break it up first, like so. But then I like to turn down the amount of radial symmetry to like an uneven number, like an odd number, I guess. Maybe 3. And that will mean that I'm still affecting 3 times as many areas as I'm breaking this up, but now I can't see them together. One thing you have to be concerned about when you're creating environments is repetition, right? I'm sure you've seen it before, like the same brick pattern over and over again, the same tree everywhere, right? So what I like to do is I like to make sure that you can't even see repetition on the model itself. So by doing it every 3, there's no real position I can look at the model and see the same detail multiple times. All right, but I'm still kind of saving a little bit of time by not doing every single part by itself. So I'm going to just kind of like create a few extra little scratches. Maybe I'll take off the alpha, put on another one of those pointy alphas, and kind of start breaking up the, let me make this brush a little stronger, breaking up that silhouette at the bottom here, kind of like giving it some little breaks, like so, things like this. To just kind of make it a little bit more organic, more fun. And there's so much we can do with this, okay? So, one thing I really enjoy, I'm going to be doing this over and over today's lecture. One thing I really enjoy doing is using morph targets nowadays to create some details that are easier to do. So, some of the mushrooms that were on my reference board had this like cute little border, like this on there. But it was very layered. So this looked like one layer that would end here. Then there would be another layer and another layer of like the outer skin of the mushroom. To create this, I would probably have to come in here and kind of like start taking off by hand a little bit of the surface to create that layered effect, smooth it, and then kind of continue. So what I like to do instead is I like to use morph targets. I'm literally addicted to them right now. What a morph target is, and this is the same throughout every pipeline that uses morph targets, is what it does is it stores the location of every single vertex in your model in a certain state or position. So if I store a morph target under the morph target tool panel here, it's going to remember where every single vertex or everything is here. So I'm going to be able to reapply it. Then can come in here, maybe use the inflate brush or anything to just kind of take off some surface volume, like so. Oh, too much. Then I can use my morph target brush, which is what makes the morph target brush so special, is that you can apply a morph target to a selected area of the model. Most other 3D software, you can only apply the morph target to the whole software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restore the top parts back to its original morph targets. I'm going to make the focal shift really low so that we get a nice harder border. And what I can do is just restore. Maybe I'll even throw an alpha on there to make it look nicer. And what that's going to do is it's going to let me layer these things without creating any sort of damage to the rest of the mushroom. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of continue. Make sure you grab the morph target. So literally all I'm doing is I'm restoring the original position. I'm not actually really sculpting anything. And by default, by comparison, because I took off some of the width right here, it's going to let me layer. All right, so we're going to be doing this for all sorts of things. It's like one of my favorite tricks. So I'm going to delete the current morph target, grab another one. Maybe I'll do it again for more layering. So a little bit of inverse inflates, just push that in, just a little bit. Then morph target brush. And since I just got a new morph target, this line is already stored. So what I can do is I just can continue doing the layering as I would wish. The style I went for the, looks like I missed this area. It's okay. The style I went for the Unreal environment was a little bit stylized, a little bit like Sea of Thieves, so it's okay to leave these harsher lines and maybe just give them like the most gentle of smoothings. So I'm going to turn down the smooth intensity by pressing down spacebar and shift. When you do that, all the brush options switch over to the smoothing brush options. Lower that, and then go ahead and smooth. Like so. We can do a lot more with this. For example, if I wanted this mushroom to have, let's say, another variation, so duplicate, like so. I want this mushroom to have like cute little dots like Ian's mushrooms from yesterday. I could totally come in here and start adding little dots everywhere, and sculpting them by hand. Or I could do it one time and use the extractor brush. One of the best features, in my opinion, of ZBrush. So the way you do that is I'm going to take off symmetry for now, and I'm going to sculpt on however I want my little detail to look. So first I'm going to take a little dam standard, which is the little knife that we had, and kind of cut in a little circle, maybe so that the surface kind of cuts in around the detail that we want. Then maybe a little clay buildup to kind of just raise the center area. Maybe a little bit around, just make it look extra noisy. Something like this. So let's say that's what I want the dot to look like. I can then find the extractor brush in my brush panel. You press B to get to the brush panel. And you can find these 3 extractor brushes. If you press X, it will highlight them. Extractor, extractor dot, and extractor drag rectangle. All that changes between these is the application method. So I'm going to do drag rectangle. And what I can do is I can extract this detail into an alpha automatically. So the way we do that is we have to go back in history to before that detail is applied. I guess all the way to the beginning in this case. And then you have to press Control and click in history. You'll notice that it turns history to white. That means it's stored. What this brush is going to do is it's going to calculate everything that's been moved or changed. since this point in history to now. Then I can simply come in here, press G on my keyboard, which will make my mouse kind of teal color, and it will extract this detail based on this calculation. So I'm going to click and drag on my surface, and you'll notice that now there's an alpha in here that represents that detail that we just found. So now I can start dragging it in, and let me go ahead and change the focal shift a little bit. I can start dragging it in, and it will be the exact same detail over and over again. The most easy way to make an alpha ever. Guys, like, I am always telling my students, like, and my mentees, you want to make a little extra cash on the side? Go make some of these. Sell them on the internet, you know? So let's go ahead and turn on my symmetry once again. And I can just kind of throw those on. You can even make it work with polypaints and like textures. You can apply the texture right here on it. And I can make my mushroom look... Okay, now he looks a little, you know, sci-fi creepy. But that's exactly what we want, all right? And we can do that over and over again with as many details as you wish. Pro tip, save out your alphas, okay? I've had 1 or 2 catastrophic losses in my past. So here you go how you do it. Click alpha, export, all right? That's how you can save it as a 2D texture that you can re-import in the future. Okay, so now we have a creepy version of the mushroom. We have a more simple version of the mushroom. We have the like the button top version. You know what? This one also needs a couple of these. I'll just do like a pattern, like so, maybe. The longer you drag the brush, obviously, the bigger it's gonna get, like so. Let's make a couple extra stalks. So one of the stalks I made for the presentation was this twisty, turny stalk, and it's one of my favorite things. Okay, let me show you how to do that. What I did was, first, I started off with the overall kind of cross-section shape of what the twist would look like, because you can tell it's kind of got this look like it's multiple vines all twisted together. All right, so what I did was I appended a plane 3D, into my scene. Let me go find it real quick. It's hidden. There it is. I'm going to drag it down. Select it first. Drag it down. I'm going to rotate it so it's facing up. What I'm going to do is, while rotating, I'm going to press Shift, and that will let me snap to the next 5-degree angle. A lot of people don't know that about ZBrush. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. What's going to happen is I'm going to divide up my plane so that I can get a nice, good drawing on it. Let me hide this mushroom top temporarily. And I'm going to mask out with whatever brush I want, really, doesn't really matter. I'm going to mask out a shape that I want the cross-section to look like. So let's give it like a wiggly shape. Honestly, it doesn't matter too much. The more detail you put into it, the more detail you're going to see in the cross-section. So I like to come in here and kind of like, do not soften your mask. Keep it nice and sharp. I'm just going to come in here and add a little bit of some dots and things like this to kind of make it more crazy. Sometimes I even like to go crazy and add a few external dots, and that will kind of create some vines on the outside as we move upwards, okay? Let's turn on the poly frame, which is basically our wireframe, and if we have poly groups in ZBrush, then you're going to see the colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Geometry, Edge Loop Masked Border. Oh, doesn't like subdivisions. Okay, that's fine. Delete the lower subdivisions. We got subdivisions right here from when I divided. Delete lower. Go ahead and Edge Loop Masked Border. And what that's going to do is it's going to take that mask and turn it into a nice little loop for us. Now I can just separate these two things from each other. So to isolate a group, just press Control-Shift and click on it one time. And then you're going to be able to see the group. I'm going to go to Modify Topology and Delete Hidden. And what that's going to do, it's going to get rid of the rest of the plane. Next, let's go to Add Thickness by going to Dynamic Subdivision. This is the only way I like to add thickness. There's like 40 other ways, okay? Dynamic, and then I'm going to say thickness, and I'll just drag that up, like so. Let's turn on Polyframe temporarily, and it's going to take that plane and basically extrude it by adding some thickness. I'm going to turn this off. This is how many subdivisions you're getting right now. We don't need those. Let's turn it off, and I'm going to hit Apply. So now I have this kind of like wobbly stalk shape, and I can make it longer. And one thing I recommend is checking the polyframe. I can't do any alterations to this because the polygons are so long. So if I try to grab it with the move brush, like it can't really work. See that? It's like kind of all broken. Oops. Looks like I did way too much to it, in fact. So what we're going to do first, before doing anything else to it, ZRemesher. Just give it a little ZRemesh. That way it'll spread out the polygons again, like so. And now I can come in here and start changing the model. Okay, let's make that longer again. And now we have kind of a base for our like twisty, turny stalk. What I love to do, let me turn on the little mushroom top again, so that we know how long it has to be, like so. What I love to do is I love to use deformers. So let's go ahead and try a couple of deformers to affect this stalk. First one I like to do is the taper, which will allow me to grab these little cones and either pull them out so that the stalk becomes thicker, or push it in so that it will become thinner. So I'm going to go basically thicken the bottom a little bit. Then I'm going to continue. I'm going to press the gizmo and hit accept. And I'm going to press the gizmo again and twist. The twist deformer, it looks the same, but when you pull the little cone, it starts to twist the object. Before we do that, however, I really enjoy duplicating my mesh just in case I want to make some more variations later. I don't want to have to use the pre-twisted one, so to speak. So let's go ahead and, again, W to get the gizmo, click on the gear. We're going to twist and just give it a nice old twist. And if you twist the top, you'll either untwist if you go the opposite direction or twist it more. It's up to you how you want to do it. And then we can hit accept. So that was kind of how I created this easily. I do this for everything, like for like sculpted hair, for 3D printing, for example. Like if you want a nice twist and you want a nice cross section of the hair, like it kind of looks like hair a little bit. I want to show you guys something else that you can do with your twisting, which is all of the deformers take into consideration the position of your gizmo. So if I unlock my gizmo by pressing on the lock button and twist it a little bit or move it off center and do it again and try twisting, it's going to be off center. See that? That being said, it can create some really funky results by being off center. You see, it's like slightly different than the original. So now we're getting more of this like zigzag pattern on our stalk, which I also enjoyed for, you know, the mushroom craziness, so to speak. Let me just kind of fix out the bottom. Changing the bottom is actually a great segue into the next thing, which is just a normal deformer, which is more like a cage in other 3D software. So what this does is instead of having to use the move brush, which just grabs and moves things, and drag it down, which we could do, but it could be a little bit more on the messy side, what we can do is we can use a cage that deforms the whole thing more evenly. So W to get the gizmo, gear, and then we're going to go to deformer. Then all you have to do is simply grab the points you want to deform and drag them wherever you want them to go, and it will move with an extremely clean like fall off. All right, so I really enjoy doing it this way more than with the move brush. I find that I just get so much better results, and it's kind of less time consuming, which is the whole point. Let's go ahead and accept that, and now we have one of those kind of more twisty stalks that I made for the tower. All right. Another thing I really enjoyed doing when I was creating the mushrooms was using booleans. A lot of mushrooms have little pieces missing from them. You know, like they're out in the forest, they get damaged. It's okay. But I'm going to use booleans to kind of like cut some chunks off of them and make some extra variations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder. Let me actually move this mushroom all the way to the bottom so we can keep it separate. These arrows here to move subtools up and down. So I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this one Boolean Mushroom. Woo! Spell that correctly. Okay, close enough. So the Boolean will happen inside of this folder. I can come in here and append another shape. In this case, I want to append a cube that I will Boolean off of my mushroom top. So let's put that inside of the folder as well. The way Boolean works is there's this little arrow which will allow you to say, this is my starting point for Booleaning, and everything else will affect it in some way. And it being inside the folder just makes it extra clean. to turn on the live Boolean preview, which is another one of my favorite things in ZBrush, you have to click up here in live Boolean, and this will basically start previewing to you what live Boolean looks like. See these options? They're tiny little circles. There's the additive one, which is 2 circles. One is black and one white circle, which is subtractive, and this one is the difference. Okay, so Booleans in ZBrush work like any other software, but it does allow you to preview it. So if I move my objects that are getting Booleans, you can kind of see it update in real time. I'm going to take my little cube, and I'm going to move it off. Let's go ahead and not make it Boolean for a second so that I can kind of position it. I'm going to use one of these corners to just cut out a little triangle chunk from the mushroom. So let's make it thinner and kind of just so it fits in the corner here. Like that. Maybe I'm going to rotate the gizmo so that I can squish it in this axis. So I'm going to alt-click this button here so that I can kind of squish it. This will basically make the gizmo snap back to like the grid. And I'm going to position it. Let's turn on the subtractive Boolean, and we can start kind of affecting it to kind of cut out a little chunk of our little mushroom. So let's go ahead and cut out a little chunk. I might have to make this a little bit longer so it doesn't look weird. If you see little floating pieces like this, it means you probably need to make your Boolean mesh bigger. So let's show it again. Something like that. I might even want to use the deformer on this later, or go solo so that we can have a better fall off in the back here. Turn off solo mode. Let's go ahead and Boolean again. And we can start cutting off little chunks from our little mushroom. So one thing you can do is, even while in Boolean mode, if you have the gizmo up and you have no subdivisions and you control and drag, you will duplicate the mesh. So I'm going to just kind of drag it around, maybe make like a smaller cut right here. Control drag again, rotate. The rotation matters, of course. Maybe this one will be more narrow and things like that. So this is another way I was able to quickly add some slight variation to all these different little mushrooms. All right. So let's go ahead and actually Boolean this, because right now it's just the preview. If I hide the different objects, it's going to be obvious that it's a preview. So what we can do is we can click right here. There are lots of ways to Boolean things. One of the classical ways is to go to Subtool, Boolean, and make Boolean mesh. And what it'll do is it'll take everything and create a brand new mesh up here with the Booleans. And you can actually see by the polyframe that it has been Booleaned, all right? But the way I like to do it is by folder. So what I'm going to do is, let me turn off polyframe. Right here, when you have your Boolean objects in a folder, you can click on the gear. Then you can go to Boolean folder, or Boolean with subdivisions. I kind of like this one. So I'm going to click that, and it's automatically going to add another subtool that is already in your project. You don't have to worry about anything. There you have your Boolean mushroom. Okay. So we're starting to build a little library of different options and different little mushrooms. Let me actually hide this folder temporarily. I'm just going to move it off somewhere. All right. We have a bunch of little options. Let's organize everything by creating folders. So new folders, I'm going to call this one tops. And let's go ahead and just drag all of the different tops in that we have, like so. And then new folder, and I'm going to call this one, oops. I should probably click on the object I want to add into the folder. New folder, stocks. And then I'm going to drag all the stocks in here. I just like keeping it organized because we can. If you saw my ZBrush file for the project, you'd see that I have like 500 in there. So keep it organized is the key. Okay, so now what we can do is we can start setting up pre-made clumps of mushrooms. So let's get into it. We can basically pick what we want. So for example, I might want this top. So I'm going to duplicate it and move it out of the folder. Then I'm going to choose which bottom I want to use. Kind of not super detailed, but I'm going to duplicate this one and move it down out of the folder. hide everything else. And then I can just merge these two. So merge down. Okay. Oh, and one really important thing about merging is that a lot of my students don't know this, so I'm just going to say it. You can actually maintain subdivisions when merging, all right? You don't have to get rid of them. So let's divide these a few times, just for example. So this one already had 3 subdivisions. Let me check this one. 3 subdivisions. The only thing you have to do to be able to maintain your subdivisions when merging is make sure that both of them have the exact same amount of subdivisions and both of them are set to the highest subdivision. And that will take care of that. So let's try it. Merge down. Okay. You can see it says full reconstruction, reconstructing subdivisions. Let's test it out. There's our subdivisions. Of course, the density will maintain based on the original. So my mushroom top was already more dense at the first subdivision, so it's not going to be a 100% match, but it already still works. So what I like to do is I like to start creating like positional variants of my little mushroom guys so that I can use them in the future. So I'm going to start off by just creating like one basic one, then duplicate. We're going to duplicate a lot today. Maybe I'll even keep the other one visible, move it off to the side here. And what I like to do is I like to use, you guessed it, deformers to create variations. So I'm going to start by hiding parts of the mesh and using the deformer to curve it out. Oh, it doesn't like my subdivision levels, so I don't really need them right now. I was just kind of trying to show you guys. So I'm going to delete my lower subdivision levels. And without hiding, I can just come in here and I can do multiple deformers. My favorite being bend curve. Bend curves is great for little mushrooms. I'm going to click that. And what this one does is it gives you points that you can yank around to move your mushroom, but it goes along a curve. In this case, it's going up the y-axis. You can change the axis by dragging this colorful green cone. So green's going to be for the y, I think. This is going to be the x. And this is going to be the z. So you can see how the dots are changing to account for that. So let's move it back to the green. And then this little top cone is going to be how many points I have along my curve. If you're ever unsure about what something does in ZBrush, please just hover over it, and normally it'll tell you, okay? So I'm going to add 1 point. I always start with 3. And what I can do is I can just kind of start manipulating a little bit of the shape of the mushroom really cleanly to create kind of a nice little variant. So I'm going to just do a little curve, maybe from multiple angles as well. I like to do as many angles as possible to really create some variety. Maybe I'll add more points. You can add and take off points at any time, which is the really cool thing. So I'm just going to make the stalk more curved. And this is my imaginary floor plane. So some of the mushroom is going to be underneath the floor inside of Unreal. All right, and that's okay. Actually, I prefer it that way because it gives us more flexibility when placing them down. I'm going to press in the gear, accept, and here we have one more variation for us. Let's do another one. Maybe I'll duplicate this one and then move it off to the side, like so. And then I can do some sort of other deformer. I could even twist it. Oops, let's delete the subdivisions. Give it a little twist. Just ever so slightly. Maybe this one will be a slightly twisted mushroom. Accept that. I'm going to deform it along the curve. I always start with 3 points. It's kind of my personal rule for life. And this one will be more this way, but not too much. Like so. And little by little, we're going to have like a whole library. And they're all similar because they're all the same species, right? But they're all been through different lives. So they've been through different things. Okay. One tip I really like is for polypainting. Polypainting is ZBrush's way of applying paints to the model. It's similar to vertex painting and most other softwares. So you're not actually painting a texture, you're painting directly on the vertices, which means that the actual density of the model does impact how it looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly paint this mushroom in the middle. It's my favorite one. So I'm going to use the paint brush to paint. PA is the shortcut. And I'm just going to choose kind of a base color, maybe like a light or a yellow color. I think is a good base color, at least for the stock area. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the object with color. So if you go to color, fill object, it will literally fill it like a paint bucket. All right. So I'm going to come in here, choose a classical mushroom color, maybe red, and just paint the little top however I wish. And we're just adding some base color, like so. Painting is pretty fun in ZBrush. I do it all the time. I always do it way too early. It's normally a good thing to wait until the end to paint because the paint can kind of hide all the imperfections in your model, right, when it comes to actual modeling itself. Don't worry, though. You can just turn it off. So if you click this little paintbrush option inside of the subtool panel, it'll turn off the paints, and it'll just default to whatever color you have selected. Or there's this slider up here under render. It's render, fade opacity, and that will literally fade off any paint or vertex coloring you might have. So you can actually see a little bit of paint or not a lot. It's up to you how you want to do it. What I like to do is I like to use the cavity mask in order to be able to like darken the inner areas of the mushroom, or like get these little bits and turn them to a different color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, in my tool panel, I'm going to go to masking, like so. And I'm going to mask by cavity, click that. And you can see that it's trying to find all the little different cavities inside of my model and mask those out. You can actually come in here into this graph and change the profile of the cavities that you wish to see, or the intensity, click mask by cavity. Honestly, I never know for sure what this graph is doing. I just kind of move it around and eventually something happens. So let's see what else we got here. Mask by cavity, okay, that was too much. Like so. And then I can kind of invert the mask and start maybe painting with a darker color. Pro tip that not a lot of people necessarily know, but it's really useful. You can actually copy colors inside of ZBrush by hovering over the model and pressing C, and that will actually like copy the color that you're hovering over. So C, 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 and it's just copying the color. So I'm going to grab that red, maybe make it a little darker, and maybe try to, oops, actually invert. Try to get it in these like cavities. Let's see. Actually, I'm doing the opposite. Masking confusion. I think I'm going to try to increase the mask intensity by going to sharpen mask, like so. I think that's too sharp. So now I can come in here and start drawing on it. So let's see what that looks like. Starting to kind of get in those crevices of the little dots and things like that. It's going to go with our weird kind of dark sci-fi look for this mushroom, I guess. Like so. Takes a little work. Oop. There's a little bit of imperfection around here from my alpha, but we can really do a lot with masking with all of this. I love to add gradients to my work, so I'm going to copy that red and maybe go to like a more orangey color and just real quick just kind of paint it over the top here. Just to add some variation. So there are thousands of ways you can do this. It's all about really, in my opinion, like as a technical artist, kind of thinking through the workflow a little bit before you jump in, and then you can kind of speed through it much more easily. Okay. So from here, what I did next to be able to flesh out the forest was I made some preset like clumps of mushrooms. Let's do that real quick. I'm going to just hide these other ones. And what I did was I just duplicated them, or just control drag. You can make them different sizes and heights. The more variations you have, the better. And then you can start kind of putting them together, like so. And then eventually you can just paint them on to the landscape inside of Unreal or whatever other engine you're using. And it'll be much easier. You don't have to worry about like the composition of the little clumps. So I just control dragged. Just make it a little smaller, something like this. And I exported every single one of these options into Unreal. So I exported the single mushrooms, the little clumps, and different rotations and things like that. And then I just use the foliage brush inside of Unreal to just put it all out there on the ground. And it saved me so much time to be able to work this way by making it modular. And of course, we're really not necessarily pushing the envelope, but you can do this with all these different tops and bottoms and just combine them. If you have like a library of 10, that's a lot of options you have. If you change out the stalks and all the things. I even had a mushroom that had a little like extra hats on top. It ended up not making it into the final cut, unfortunately. But little things like that, like accessories. I do this for everything. I love making a lot out of a little, whenever possible. While I was working on this project, I came up with I didn't come up with it, but I found a workflow through trial and error that allowed us to create really easy and fun rocks. We got this like stylized look on the rocks. It was inspired by Sea of Thieves. So I wanted to show you guys how I made them today, and then we're just going to combine them with our little mushrooms and maybe make a little decoration piece or something like that, okay? So let's talk about rocks. I love making rocks. There are a lot of cool features you can use for making some rocks in ZBrush. Let's go ahead and make a brand new tool. So I'm going to go to the tool panel, click on tool, just select a sphere. I'm going to make my color white again so that my sphere stays white. And most important part, make Polymesh 3D. That makes it editable so that we can change things around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this rock, the sphere really. In my imagination, it's already a rock. And I'm going to just turn it into a rock-ish shape, something that isn't perfectly round. So there's my rock shape, all right? Next, I'm going to cut out chunks so that it looks, it has more like planes on it. Oops. Like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the new knife brushes. So B for brush panel, K for knife. I think knife curve is a good option. All right. And what we can do is make sure we don't have subdivisions. We're good. We can start using Control and Shift, like it asks us to do, and simply drag a line out. The dark side of the line is what's going to be chopped off. And basically, it's going to let us basically do some crazy surgery to this rock, poor thing. And we're going to start cutting off all these pieces. You can press down spacebar and drag to reposition or change the shape or the line. So I'm just kind of cut, trying to find all the different cool angles I can cut this rock. Like so. Don't leave any of the round areas in. Try taking them off. Whoop. Like that. And then I'm going to start cutting even some of the corners off. Like so, to kind of round out the rock, get all these nice planes in there. Try to avoid areas that are kind of like 290-degree angle. I like to chop those. Like that. And we have the beginnings of something a little bit more rocky. All right. The next step is to dynamesh it so that I can start modeling on it. If we look at the polyframe, we'll notice that it has a lot of ugly triangles trying to make those edges sharp. We don't want to model on that. That will not look good. For example, if I take the clay buildup and try going along the edge, it's going to be a little strange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dynamesh it. I'm going to dynamesh it pretty high. Normally, this is against my rules. I try to keep it low at first and then go up. But we want it pretty high dynamesh. So I'm going to go maybe 400. And we can still see the little dynamesh dots. So I'm going to go even a little higher. All right, there we go. And I'm going to take one of my other favorite brushes, the Trim Dynamic, which basically flattens areas that you touch it, like that. And I'm going to kind of come in here and manually add those little corners that we see in like every stylized game or movie ever. All right, so we're just making sure that the corners are nice and cut in, especially these. All right, the areas in between, I like to go a little lighter on them. I like to make my brush like nice and big, and for the corners, I like to make them big. For the edges, I like to make them small. Make it a little bit organic. Like, don't be perfectionistic with this. Like, give it a little wiggle, you know? So let's continue. I don't know if I'll be able to do the whole thing. So like, it might be one of my classic stream things where I only model one side of the object. Yeah, for sure. So, almost there. I just want to make sure one side has all of these areas. Once I'm done with that, I like to take the clay buildup and turn off the alpha. And I just want to like change things up ever so slightly in these big faces. So I'm going to just wiggle my brush in there. The reason I like this workflow, it's kind of fun and loose, and I don't have to worry about anything. So I just like to do that, and then take the big clay trim dynamic, make it huge, and then just go along. And it's going to kind of create these like cool craters for me, a little bit of like a change in the surface, like so. And the clay buildup just makes sure that I'm not working on a plane. You know, it's got more imperfection on it, like so. What I love to do is I love to use morph targets, like I mentioned earlier. So I like to use those for making cracks or cuts in the rock. So let's go ahead and try it and see what that looks like. Morph target, store the morph target. Now the current positions of everything in our rock are stored. And I can come in with the dem standard, make it nice and strong, and start doing some cuts on the rock. I want to do like some cuts, but you'll notice that this doesn't look like a crack or anything special. It looks like a brush that was applied, and it's got a very circular start and ends, right? But I'm going to do some more cuts. Maybe this one will be like a crack down here with a shape, something like that. So I'll take the morph target that I just stored and use the morph target brush. The shortcut is MG. And what I can do is it still has the square alpha from last time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of come in here and sharpen those edges by simply restoring them to their original position. I do this for everything, guys. Like, it's such an easier way to get those like sharp little lines as opposed to most other workflows. So I'm just kind of coming in here. This one's going to be like somebody who used their sword and they were frustrated and they cut the rock a little. This one's going to be more of a natural crack, like so. Sometimes I smooth it a little bit. And there we have a little bit of cracks and things like that. Normally I wouldn't put all three on one side. I think it will hurt the variation potential of my project. So I would probably put one on each side so that we don't notice those patterns. It's all about pattern repetition. If I need to be able to reuse the same model over and over again. So the last finishing touch is going to be clay polish. I'm going to go to geometry, clay polish right here. And what this does is it polishes the object. But clay polish has a cool feature, which is sharpness. I'm going to turn that all the way to 100 because it'll try to maintain the edges, all right? So if I hit clay polish once or twice or 3 times, I like to overdo it. It will kind of harden those edges bit by bit and creates this like really cool stylized effect, which I really enjoy. See, it's like a lot nicer now than it was before. And you can even use the mask to do some polypainting if you wanted to create your funky little rock here. I'm going to bring it into the mushroom project real quick because I have this little mushroom clump. And the way you can, oh gosh, the morph target brush does this, by the way. Just change, if it ever starts annoying you, just change to a different brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to append that rock that I just made into this project by going to append down here. Anything that's in your tool palette already loaded can be appended. So append, select my little rock, bring it in. Maybe I'll put it like underneath the little mushrooms. So it looks like the mushrooms are growing out of my rock. I should probably rotate it so that the actual sculpted area is more visible. I don't know how I'm going to do that. Actually, I think I liked it better the other way, like that. Let's throw on a quick little poly paint. Maybe I'll make it more dark gray. color fill object. Maybe I'll throw on a little cavity mask. Let's see, masking, mask by cavity. Let's change the cavity profile. Sharpen that mask. It's not quite. Let's see a different mask. Maybe mask by normals or smoothness. I try all the different masks every time. Like every model has a different surface makeup that looks totally different on the masks. And then we can try painting on a lighter color. I'm going to go ahead and expand the mask. So grow mask, grow mask, grow mask, and maybe like smooth mask a little. Blur mask. Looks a little lumpy. We're going to try it. Okay, not the worst thing ever. Maybe I'll throw on a little bit of spray. This will change the way the brush is applied by spraying its color around. And maybe throw on an alpha as well. This one, and just kind of like add a little color variation, things like that. Onto my little rock. This would have been nice for the mushroom too. Like so. One cool thing you can do in Unreal is like you can blend the materials as they touch to each other. But that is basically it for today's presentation. Basically some cool new not new features, but cool new ways to work, especially using deformers, especially using morph targets. They will save you so much time while you're working. I recommend really trying them out if you can. And make some fun stylized rocks, because your life will get better because it's more fun. All right? So just FYI, we created this series called Getting Started with Max on ZBrush and Getting Started with Redshift and ZBrush in the Z Classroom. You can go find it. It's absolutely free. I break down like every single thing you need to know to learn ZBrush to like its easiest components, and I use the default UI, which I know a lot of people appreciate. So go check out those at Cineversity or Z Classroom. You just Google that, and it'll be the thing that pops up. Thank you all so much for being here today, and I appreciate it, you all. Thank you for having me, and I'll see you later.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Ana Carolina Carrera. Anybody have any questions for Ana? Any questions? Boy, everybody partied last night too much, didn't they? Yeah. Great. So reminder, we'll be putting these presentations up after the show, so you can come back and watch them anytime. If you missed one, check out go2dat.com for a tour. We're going to be coming around, hopefully, to your city. So we'll bring the trade show to you. And hold on for a few minutes, and we'll have Thomas and Amanda from Vessel Studios doing some really cool medical animation work. Thank you.